Greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm Tulsi Gabbard. I just have a knack. I didn't realize it was even on the picture, but I'm just going to start here. Tulsi Gabbard and Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris had a gaffe. Tulsi Gabbard says something here that supports a truther theory out there. And after I'm done with this video portion, in the voiceover portion, I forgot something about the Kanye West. I talked about it, but I didn't talk about it clearly. I listened to the end of the video, and I missed out on a key point about Kanye's documentary and something big in the truth community. And then I'm going to address this thing about adrenochrome, because I got so many comments, and, people don't understand, and I want to make my position and perspective of this thing, not just about adrenochrome, but the truth community in general, and that, you're missing the point. You're missing what I'm saying, and you're getting butthurt because you're locked into something without any flexibility or wiggle room. Anyways, I'll get into that in a moment. And just, a practical way to approach truther stuff. So I want to read a few comments, and then I'll, jump off from there at the end of the, after this part. But let's start here with Tulsi Gabbard.
Here are the undeniable facts. There are 25 to 30 U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine.
One of my viewers sent me this, right? So this has been a big point of contention in the truth community.
According to the U.S. government, these biolabs are conducting research on dangerous pathogens. Ukraine is in an active war zone with widespread bombing, artillery, and shelling, and these facilities, even in the best of circumstances, could easily be compromised and release these deadly pathogens. Now, like COVID, these pathogens know no borders.
Okay, so the theory in the truth community, and I'm not saying whether I agree with it or not, I believe it's possible. Like, that's what I'm talking about in general here. There's too much locking in and thinking you know something when you don't know. There's too much thinking you have a fact when you don't have a fact in the truth community. It's been a big problem, and the problem blew up in the truth community's face with the cubies. So I'm going to come back to that. But what the theory is that Russia is bombing these biological labs to keep them from doing another COVID or something like that, right? Whatever it is. Like, it's, the basic theory is that Russia is trying to prevent another COVID and America has these labs there, whatever, And again, why does the Ukraine have these labs? I mean, she's saying that
there are 25 to 30 U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine.
Why does the U.S. have funded labs in the Ukraine? Well, because they want to unleash some shit on Russia, right? I mean, if that's what she's saying is true, and she used to be a senator, like, I don't believe anything, 100%, right? You understand this? Because I've just, the lies are just, and maybe you think, oh, there's some support for this, but is it disinformation or not? But if what she's saying is true, then they're there because they want to have the power to drop these things into Russia, right? I mean, that's why they would be positioned there, and or China, because that would be at least closer to China than some of these other places, America, for example. And if these things leaked out, it would hit worse these places, presumably than, other places.
On the world, these labs need to be shut down immediately, and the pathogens that they hold need to be destroyed.
Well, they would have done that already, right? Like any sane person running the government in either the Ukraine or America would say, all right, get rid of the past after what happened with COVID. In fact, all these labs should be shut down and everything destroyed after what happened with COVID because, I think most people with any common sense realize that COVID was more than likely intentionally or unintentionally, allegedly, leaked from a biolab, possibly in Wuhan, possibly somewhere else. And if that's the case, then that means they can't contain these pathogens, right? And so then, that means that you should get rid of them because they have worse things than COVID. They have much worse things than COVID. And if they can't contain it leaking one way or another, then they shouldn't be, effing around with these things. Okay, so Kamala Harris, she just sucks so bad. It's really hard to listen to her. She's got that unlikability factor like Hillary did. I talked about how they had her, they were pimping her out as like a secondary candidate. Remember, she confronted JoJo Magoo, and they started covering her like she was legitimate, and America said no. Like her polling numbers went up to about 12% of the Democratic Party, which is, about 4 or 5% of the American, the American public, right? Maybe even less. And so she wasn't getting approval when they were pushing her out there. Tulsi Gabbard confronted her, remember, a couple times, but America, the Democrats realized they didn't like her. And she didn't even make it to the primary. She was polling under 1%. Her campaign collapsed because she's unlikable. But JoJo Magoo boxed himself into picking a woman and then a woman of color. So he went with the most demographics because she's, Jamaican and Indian, and so East Indian. So they had, multiple demographics, and she was a woman, so they picked her. But she's horrible. Like she's not as senile as JoJo Magoo, but she's, unlikable as like she's got Hillary Clinton unlikability, and she's just not good at what she does, right? She's not a good speaker. And she sticks her foot in it again here in the speech.
May never know your names, may never know my name, but will be forever impacted and to our mission uplifted because of the work of the people in this room. And so when I think about where we are, based on the work that has already happened to get us here, I know it has been hard work and good work. I also want to give a special shout out to the Californians in the room.
Yeah, don't do that. People aren't liking Californians.
Because how could I not? But to everyone, thank you again. So I just returned this morning from Poland and Romania.
And you did an outstanding job.
And I'll tell you that everything that you were watching on television, I know makes you understand and feel the importance of this moment on many levels.
Yeah, it's so feeling. What about the other wars? What about America illegally invading or immorally invading Afghanistan, Libya, police action in Libya and Iraq, and then trying to do it in Syria? Like, what about those wars? Like, what about the people suffering? What about the immigrants? What about the countries being torn apart? Like, just, the hypocrisy.
When I was meeting with our allies, I emphasized that the greatest strength that we share is unity.
I bet they were thrilled to have you there.
Especially at this moment, as we stand together in defense of democracy and stand together in defense of each other.
Woo! Woo!
And that unity and our collective resolve has been strengthened, of course, since Russia's re-invasion of Ukraine.
Re-invasion. Their re-invasion.
And Putin's war.
Putin's war. That's a talking point. It's Putin's war. Look out for Putin's war.
Russia's invasion.
When does Putin's war become World War III?
Threatens not just Ukraine's democracy, it threatens democracy and security across Europe.
No, it doesn't. Russia isn't going to attack any other country in Europe because of the NATO alliance. Because if they do, that's World War III. And so as soon as Russia attacked any country in Europe, they're now at war with America. And America would have the backing of everybody but maybe China. I mean, I don't know. But certainly the UN and all these things and all the European countries. And Russia would be toast. It might go nuclear, But other than that, Russia had no chance of winning that war. Russia isn't going to try to invade all these other countries. It's stopping Ukraine from going into NATO because this dope promised the Ukraine that she would put them in NATO, even though they didn't meet the criteria. And that's what sort of set this thing off, at least partially.
And by extension, when democracy is threatened anywhere, it threatens us all. And the ocean that separates us.
No, that's not true. We don't even have to. I just stop.
Will not leave us untouched by this aggression. So I will say what I know we all say, and I will say over and over again. The United States stands firmly with the Ukrainian people in defense of the NATO alliance.
So this is the big gaff, right? And there are supporters of Kamala that are saying, well, no, you're taking it out of context. She's not saying the Ukrainians are a part of NATO. Listen to it again here.
So I will say what I know we all say, and I will say over and over again. The United States stands firmly with the Ukrainian people in defense of the NATO alliance.
That means we're at war with Russia then. If you're saying what she's saying here, and, again, this is what it sounds like. There's not really any other reasonable explanation. Maybe she botched it. That the U.S. is in alliance with the NATO alliance is that if one country attacks anybody in the alliance, then they attack every country, and every country has to pony up and be a part of a war. And that would mean we're at war with Russia right now, which was why Putin invaded in the first place, because he didn't want the Ukraine getting into that NATO thing, which she helped trigger, because she's like, some sort of a horseman of the apocalypse, right? Woo! Go to war with Russia, woo! We're the Democrats, woo! We like peace, woo! We're vegans, woo! Go to war with Russia, woo!
And I'll tell you, while I was there these last couple of days, I met with the presidents of both nations, and I met with refugees from Ukraine, some of who are
Did you suck their souls from them?
Ukrainian citizens, others who were...
Okay, so that's it. I just, it's not as fun as listening to JoJo because he makes the gaffes, and she just sucks. But let's go to the voiceover part of this thing. Okay, so let me talk about the thing about Kanye first. So in terms of Kanye, there was something I covered in my video, but I didn't really make it clear. So there was a point in the documentary where this guy Cootie, Kanye sort of cut him off. Kanye was experiencing great success, and Cootie was making music videos with other artists, so they weren't in contact. They were in contact like on a daily basis before that, or quite often. He had all this footage of Kanye trying to get his first album released and these other things. And so at some point Kanye said to him, so I found the part in the documentary. Luckily, it was pretty easy. Usually it isn't because I couldn't remember what episode. But what he said was, well, I'll play it right here.
Because Kanye said he wasn't ready for the world to see the real him.
So this is just after his first album dropped and he was experiencing huge success for the first time.
He told me he was acting now, playing a role.
So he admits to that he was playing a role, right? He was acting now. He didn't want people to see the real him because he was playing a role and he was acting. If the documentary came out, he was, if you see the first part of the documentary, he's very soft. He's, seems like a nice person. I mean, he's, gentle in different ways. And then, to be famous, to be a part of the club, he had to play a role, right? And maybe he's still playing that role. I don't know. It doesn't seem like he's acting now, right? And so some of these things, like we know that the thing with Taylor Swift was staged. Like most of us understand that. And so him saying that is confirmation for this idea that you have handlers, which, we all know, but I mean, this is coming from an A-list celebrity, and him saying this and not wanting a documentary release because he was playing a role for the media. And he goes on and talks about the media and how, this is for them and for everybody. Not for them, but he's playing a role for the media for everyone else, for, the human population, Americans. And so there's that. So I didn't really make that clear because there's a lot of things that are coming out with Kanye that are confirmation in a sideways way to things we believe in the truth community, but it's more subtle than people think. And that was my point in my other video when I was talking about adrenochrome, for example. So I got so many comments. I pulled one, I think, maybe two. Let me read them, and then I'll explain this so people can have a different understanding. It's an evolution of consciousness, right? It's also being practical. And most people in the truth community don't evolve consciously. They evolve at first, and then they get into a sheeple-like position in the truth community, very rigid, very binary, or some of them just are like that anyway. And then they're just not very practical. And the things that I'm saying here, like, I don't know, I don't want to say it like an arrogant way, but they're like gems, right? They can save you a lot of time and effort. So, but let me read the comment here first. So the first comment is kind of a bonus here. This is to how Alec Baldwin helped Hilaria perpetrate her fraud. So let me just read the comment here. Pockets of the Future, at Pockets of the Future. You are clueless is in caps, about Spain. I bet you don't even know where Spain is, even where Spain even is. Is it in Europe? I think it's below France, perhaps. I don't know. I guess I kind of know. Is that enough, right? And I don't even know because I wasn't talking about Spain, and I don't know anything about Spain. I mean, I know a little bit, but I wasn't claiming to be an expert in Spain. So some sheeple showed up, so that was great. But here's the adrenochrome comment, and the person says this. Let me make this bigger here. How would I go about doing that? Here we go. You must not have done your research if you don't believe in adrenochrome. Then you haven't done your rest. And the elite, the top percent, runs the world with Satan, I think I meant Satan, as their leader. You must be controlled opposition. You got it all wrong. These famous people are controlled by entity. And so this person actually has content on their channel because I thought they would. And she gets about, 5 or 10 views per video. I only clicked on one video, and she started off by saying, I don't think Satan wants me to make this video. And I don't think Satan cares about your 5 views. I don't know. I think you're overstating the importance of your YouTube channel and you as a person because, you're not connecting with an audience. And it isn't because YouTube is preventing your brilliance from going out there, because your thought process sucks, right? You didn't understand what I was saying because you couldn't understand. You don't have the mental capacity, right? But some people might. So anyways, I'm going to explain this in a way that I think might benefit people in the truth community. So that brings us to the adrenochrome. So the first part about this is there are phases. Now, I'm not talking just about adrenochrome. I'm talking about any of the theories that are out there in the so-called truth community. And so I don't, label the phases. Like I'm not somebody who is going to get out a Word document or a piece of paper and start documenting all these things because I don't care, right? But there are phases, and you can see what phase somebody's in. So the first part is that you realize that the system you're 100% dependent on, and maybe you don't think about it in those terms, but the system that you are a part of is lying to you, right? That's phase one. And, most people think the government's lies to them and corporations lie to them, but not to the extent that people in the truth community do, right? So this is the idea that there is a huge sort of a plot, illusion, deception going on, and that everything that you see is a lie, right? That you are being deceived on every level, and you can't trust the government, the media, the whatever, the corporations, even a little bit, right? And so that's an awakening that people have, where you realize the deception is much bigger than you originally thought, right? And so the next phase is the people that are telling you that are individual people in the so-called truth community. For some people, it was Alex Jones. And for some people, it's me. I don't know, somebody or whatever it is, right? A variety of people. And then there's these shared beliefs and theories that are stated as fact within whatever group that you're doing your so-called research, in frickin' air quotes. And you are now replacing what you used to believe, the indoctrination you received at the hands of the people I call the controllers in the system, the systemic indoctrination, with some, truther slash disinformation agent slash crazy MNFer slash whatever, people who now say this is what is true. Like, so you were lied to by them, but us, you are being told the truth by us, right? By them, lied to, by us, or you're getting told the truth. And most people are stuck in that phase. So most people have just replaced their old indoctrination with these theories that have been, some sort of agreed reality in the truth community. You read articles or you watch, videos, or you do whatever you do to try to figure out what you believe. And mostly there's this consensus within the truth community about a bunch of theories that aren't factual. There's some truth in them, possibly, but most of them can't be documented in any real way. And so there is also disinformation agents working for the beast, and then there's just dummies and, just people who are whatever, wishful thinkers. And and so there's a lot of deception now within the truth community, just as much in the truth community. Now, I started to realize that, 5 years ago, when I started to check out some of these things that I was just repeating, that I believed in, that everyone believed in. I'm like, oh, this is, somebody had to fact check this. And since these are individuals who really want the truth, I'm just going to take their word for it. That's how you come in. And then when I started to check some of these things out, for example, there was a theory about thermite that years ago in the truth community that became gospel. That thermite was responsible for something that, a big event. And when I did research, that was not possible. Thermite wasn't used in the way. It was just right there for anybody to look into, right? But nobody did. Somebody floated the idea of thermite, and nobody really knew anything about that. And what they said about thermite made sense, but what thermite wouldn't be used when there is concrete around a steel girder. And so thermite isn't used in that kind of application. And when I discovered this and published it in a video, I got so much pushback from all these people who were butthurt over thermite, right? And I realized that most of the people in the truth community were just as dopey as the so-called sheep that they made fun of, because they were inflexible in their thinking, and they had just rigidly replaced their old indoctrination with a new one, and they hadn't changed their way of thinking about things, right? And so that's when I started to say, this is speculation and this is fact, right? I started to make a distinction. This is one of the reasons my YouTube channel has survived, because I didn't state things as fact that I didn't know and couldn't prove. Some things I have, I think I know more than others, right? And, there are things that are true within these narratives, but there are things that are unproven that are being stated like facts, right? And then there is this, this other aspect that you come up against, and I'm going to read this person's comment again to do with adrenochrome, right? Let me find comment here. Like sometimes I close them up. Here it is. And so I'm going to read the comment again. You must not have done your research. If you don't believe in adrenochrome, then you haven't done your rest. And the elite, the top percent, runs the world with Sarin as their leader. You must be controlled opposition. So that's something that is, think about this in the truth community, right? This is what the so-called QBs did. And there was just stupidity here where anybody that disagreed with your so-called research, you haven't done your research, you're controlled opposition, you're a shill. And so it's a defense mechanism. It's a way to keep everybody thinking and agreeing with the same points of view. That's what the controllers do. And so this is a part of the truth community now that was brought to you by a bunch of dopes. You know, it started with the flat earthers and it continued on, you know, not just like groups of people, but this way of thinking, right? That when anybody disagreed with their, whatever their assessment was, they were called to shill and were attacked, right? And the QBs brought it to a whole different level. And so whether you are right or not, you don't know for sure, right? There's lots of theories out there. And, you know, other theories are there, you know, partially proven truths, right? That have some truth in them, but not all of it is factual or provable. But there's something far beyond that. So I've gone to these various phases because I'm always like, you know, moving forward, right? And, you know, it's not like it's some great thing, but it's just being flexible and being practical, right? And so what I've realized is the system can't be saved. So this other part of this is one of your first levels, you know, the Alex Jones level, is that there's some information war. And if you wake up enough people, then the system can be reversed. And that's not true. The system can't be reversed. That's false. And if you research the economic system, you research just how, you know, lame and backward everybody is. I mean, have you talked to people in your family, you know, sheeple that are incapable of waking up, right? And to think that the people in the truth community would be the saviors, the QBs, right? Thinking themselves to be a part of some club with their, I mean, the QBs thing I called, this is why I saw through it years and years ago. Like I was already beyond that stuff, right? Like I could see that, you know, this thing was all, I mean, it was, it was just imploding the whole truth community because there was all these people that didn't have the ability for critical thinking skills. They were upset, butthurt, and desperate, and they couldn't deal with the fact that their system is collapsing around them. And that's what we all have to deal with. And that's the block for most people. Most people can't imagine a world without their system. And I can't really either, but I know it's coming and I've accepted it because the system is bad. It can't be fixed and you're not going to wake everybody up. So all of that is off the table. So this isn't, the truth community isn't about saving the system. And so that's the difference between you and me. It's not about waking other people up because the system will collapse in a bad way if you wake everybody up and there's no other way. There's no other plan, right? The system is based in perception. So the sheeple are helping the system that we're all 100% dependent on keep going, right? Because they're believing in the lies. And thank God for that because, you know, I mean, I know when the system collapses, it's a good thing, but I'm not looking forward to it, you know, because I know what it's going to be like. It's going to be rough. And so, again, you know, it's a good thing that some people don't become truthers, you know, and even the truthers that just sort of go along with it. I mean, we all do in one way or another, and that's a good thing as well because there's no plan B. This system doesn't have some sort of fail-safe. It doesn't have some sort of, you know, reset button that could make it good or, you know, there's some other system out there that's ready to be put into place, a global system replace this one. I mean, they want to stick in a new economy, but that's, you know, it's still a demonic system, right? And so there's no way to fix this system. They know it, and I know it, right? And some of you know it. So what I was saying about adrenochrome, and most of you didn't understand this because you're still back in one of these other phases, which, you know, I mean, I don't know why you are, but everyone has to go along at their own pace. I don't know, right? I mean, it's just something that you know, you move along or you don't. Some people get stuck in one phase or another. And so what I was saying about adrenochrome was, well, there is, according to the mainstream story, a thing called adrenochrome, right? And it exists, and it's supposed to have, you know, health benefits and other types of benefits. And there is some evidence, at least 300 years ago, the Queen admitted that the royal family was cannibals, and there's cannibalism out there. And so as far as we can trust the official story, we know that there is such a thing called adrenochrome. And the so-called elites, at least the royal family, admits that they used to be cannibals and there was health benefits for that. So those are things that you might consider facts, at least, you know, as far as you can trust the mainstream system, admitting to something that they, you know, why would they admit to it otherwise, right? But the theory that there are these adrenochrome farms for the elite is just that, a theory. There isn't any direct evidence, like, you know, video that, you know, indisputable video. I mean, not some, you know, tape that you hear kids screaming in that, you know, passes around the right-wing QB aspect of the internet. And so unless you experienced it personally, you were at one of these parties, you saw the adrenochrome being harvested, right? Then you don't know. It's not factual. So don't think you know. Just because, well, look at the proof I have. Okay. You know, there's lots of ways that the information that you're given in videos can be manipulated. You know, I've seen it myself, right? And I participated in it unknowingly in the beginning. And then I started to say, hey, you know, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to be more conscientious about the way I present information. So my older videos, if people saw those, I believed in the adrenochrome theory, which was made popular by David Icke, who is, you know, like Alex Jones, at least, you know, a shill, if not controlled opposition, and probably both, right? And so why would somebody who's controlled opposition put this idea out there if it wasn't endorsed by the powers that be? But the more important piece about this, whether it's true or not, you're not going to stop it. There's no plan in place. The QBs, like, that was a ridiculous thing, right? The whole Q movement was ridiculous. It was childish, and it was a fantasy, right? And so, you know, it was manipulated by people like Trump and other people who, you know, wanted the support of the so-called QBs. And the QBs believed everything that they were told, right? By other QBs who, you know, had their own interpretation of the Q drops and just, you know, ran wild with their imagination to the extent that they were pushing for martial law. I mean, think about this. This was people who were right-wing people who were into the Constitution, called themselves patriots, and they were so wound up by the lies and the exaggeration and people playing on their emotions that they had convinced of themselves that they wanted martial law, that they wanted American citizens to no longer have due process, to be grabbed off the street, thrown into Gitmo or some other place, and be given a trial by the military, like some sort of witch hunts, based in information that they didn't even know to be true, that they just trusted other people, other dopes, or other manipulators that were out there pushing lies or pushing exaggerations and selling them something that was perhaps factual but wasn't provable, and they still were willing to throw and turn the whole system of judicial process upside down and create martial law and just grab citizens off the streets and put them through these witch hunts and execute them, or worse, or whatever it was, right? Like, that's how effed up the Q movement was. JFK was real. I mean, there's so many goofy things that could have been easily, you know, like, yeah, that sounds stupid, but, you know, it just kept on going. And they embarrassed all of us, and they made anybody talking about these things look stupid. So you screwed us, right? Instead of, like, you know, following the lead of people who had been here for years and had done good work at exposing some of these lies and, you know, getting to a place of, like, a general understanding of what was going on, and it was just completely blown up by the Q movement and all these, like, double-digit IQ dopes that came in here, people that aren't capable of abstract thought, and just were goofy about it. They were hostile. They attacked anybody that didn't agree with them, and they were saying, you're part of the problem, and, you're one of them, or whatever it is. And, it sucked for the rest of us. And it continues to suck. And so that's what I was talking about, adrenochrome. I was just using that as an example. So they've taken these things off the table because they ruined them, right? Because if this is about convincing other people, which it isn't for me, you've lost all those battles because, people who were on the fence about believing some of these things, people who were watching some of these videos and sort of waking up a little bit here or there, have been, driven away, just like I talk about the heartfulness meditation, driving away new people with their bad videos, right? It's the same thing with the truth movement. You acted in ways, blaming people, doing the kind of things, created victim consciousness, going after people based in their religion or their ethnicity and things like this, saying things that were racist or whatever it was, right? Going after people in a way that they can turn against the truth community. And it fit a profile of crazy right-wing conspiracy theorists that were emotionally unbalanced, that were racist or whatever they were, right? And they were, possibly militant and violent and needed to be controlled in some way. And they were able to shut down a lot of these narratives because of you guys, right? And this kind of thinking and not being practical and not seeing the bigger picture that the truth community doesn't exist to change anything. It exists to understand why things are happening, okay? You're not going to save the system, but you can prepare yourself and other people for the events that are about to unfold because you see through the lies and deception of people covering up a collapsing system in a desperate way. And that's all it is. It's never going to be anything more than that. It's not going to, change the world. You're not going to be a savior or a hero or something like this. But you can help, with what Pockets of the Future stands for, creating a better world on the other side of the collapse. And that's why, the heartfulness meditation, which connects people to God, is a solution. Like that's something I do know from my own experience. You don't know it, but I do, right? And that's why I talk about it. And also preparing yourself and helping manifest a better world than the one we have now. And that's for the future versions of yourself as well as your kids and grandkids. And so that's what I meant by saying that, right? Like just get off of it. Like you've lost it. Those things are lost because, groups of people, starting with the Cubies, but not just them, got worked by the establishment. They turned your arguments against you. And now when you talk about these things, you look like a crazy person. And you're associated with other dopes and crazy people. So you have to let them go. You've lost it. Like the battle over adrenochrome was lost long ago. Most of the QB, anything that had to do with the QB stuff. I mean, these, idea of the, the levels of abuse that was happening to kids and, whatever it was, right? And human trafficking, that's all been lost because people say, oh, you sound like a QB. Oh, you sound like one of these crazy people. Because those crazy people wrecked it. Like that's, they got worked, they got played, they got sucked in, just like Trump got sucked in and worked, right? For you Trumpers. And he got sucked in, whether he's a part of it or he just goes dope that got sucked in and worked, doesn't really matter. The outcome's the same because of the way he handled the post-election, the way he handled COVID, he got worked, right? And all the Republicans got worked along with him, all the Trumpers. And now, with the Cubies, they are being, made fun of and ridiculed. And they're linking those people to all the rest of us, right? The rest of us who saw through the deception, right? Who saw through what they were trying to do. I said this over and over again. For years, they're trying to make us all look crazy. They're trying to make anybody who doesn't agree with the establishment crazy. So don't feed them crazy. Don't act crazy. Don't be unreasonable. Don't, get into arguments where you think you have facts that you don't, right? They're just going to embarrass you. You're going to embarrass yourself. And they're going to use it a way to demonize anybody who doesn't agree with the mainstream system. And that's what we have right now. And so many people fell into the trap. They wrecked it for the rest of us. And all of this comes from a desperation of thinking you have to save the system and wake other people up, and you don't. And so you don't need to say it in a way that you're desperate and you're trying to, oh, I got to save the world. I got to save the children. You're not going to save shit. You're not a superhero. You're not some, what did I say? The QB, the QBs used to get this little badge, right? Like, some cereal box badge, right? Some junior detective badge, decoder ring, some Q decoder ring. You're not the resistance. There is no resistance, because the resistance would mean killing the system that your fat ass is 100% dependent on, right? Like, do you have the skills to live off the grid without electricity and without water and without an economic system that we have now? Do you have the ability? Because if you don't, you're 100% dependent on the system, right? So yeah, the skills need to be there. But are you working on the skills? No, you're just out there, watching videos, eating Fritos and, like whatever it is. And so you're not the resistance. You're not doing shit, right? Like you're just sitting there on your computer, what do they call it? A cyber warrior, whatever it is, right? Armchair warrior, a couch warrior. I don't know, something. Please don't tell me, don't care, don't need to know. And so, there's a reason why we're getting this information, but it isn't the reason that you're being told. It's a reason you have to come up with. Each person has to figure it out for themselves. And that's why I cover things the way I do. I don't care about it anymore, because none of these things matter. Pretty much everybody is established. The people who are going to be truthers are truthers. The people who are going to be sheeple are sheeple. The people running the system are just going to run it into the ground. They're not going to admit that it failed. They're not going to prepare people or do anything to minimize the scope of the destructive upheavals that are about to unfold for us. The spiritual people are doing what they're doing, and there's the divine hierarchy, the higher developed beings that are trying to, make something good out of all this and raise humanity to a higher level of existence. The demonic entities and, negative people are trying to bring it down to a lower vibratory level. And the battle's going to take place in, whatever field of whatever way it takes place, on an etheric level more than anything else. And then, the dust will settle and we'll know, right? We'll know, what happened. Like who won, who lost. Did we go up? Did we go down? And the only way to go up is to connect to God internally, rise above your culture and your laziness and your, inability to, break free from your material desires and your your dependence on the system that has always been bad for all of us. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.